More often than not, we don't get to choose when or if we face adversity, but I believe we have a choice of how we face adversity. Nothing prepares you for the day your whole life gets tipped upside down, but it happens to all of us. Maybe on different scales, but regardless, we each experience something or multiple things that change our life as we know it. For me, I learnt this lesson before I even knew what the word adversity meant. At the young age of 9 years old, I had the world at my fingertips. I had a supportive family and a love for sport. I was a keen, competitive runner, having just begun competing in track. But at 9 years old, I was about to learn that sometimes we must give up things, even if we don't want to, completely out of our control, they're given up for us. One morning, I was outside playing with my sister when I decided it'd be a great idea to balance on a soccer ball. I successfully managed to do so before I came crashing to the ground. My leg instantly swelled as I screamed in pain. Mum called the ambulance and Dad scooped me up in his arms. What began as a fractured femur bone turned out to be something much worse. A tumour, cancer, bone cancer. No one deserves to go through that, but as a 9-year-old girl, that was completely unfair. But something I have since learnt is that every mountain we are given, every obstacle we have to sidestep or battle through, is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to fight. And boy, was I about to fight. Things all happened really quickly. I was admitted back into hospital where I began chemotherapy. From July 2001 through to March 2002, I underwent 16 rounds of chemotherapy, 3 different types of chemo, one of them being the strongest chemo at its strongest dose, as well as countless surgical and non-surgical procedures. Before I knew it, I weighed 18 kgs, I had a feeding tube in my nose keeping me alive, not a single hair on my body, a mouthful of ulcers, a chemo bag attached to my chest, and pain that riddled my entire body. Then things went from bad to worse as the cancer wasn't shrinking. My parents were faced with a decision no parent should have to make. The only way to save my life would be to amputate my leg. I was one of the first in New Zealand to undergo a rare 14-hour surgery, but one that would not only save my life, but give me the best possible chance at living the life I wanted, one where I could be both independent and active. I'd like to say, and the rest was history, but this was followed by more chemotherapy, where things got really tough due to my weakened immune system. Christmas Day 2001 was the closest I came to losing my battle, and a day I remember all too well. We had a lot of scary moments over those 12 months, but from my memory, this was by far the scariest. But slowly, by some sort of a miracle, I began to regain my strength and things started getting better. The chemotherapy was behind me, but I had a new battle to embark on, which, believe it or not, made cancer seem like a breeze. I now had to find a way to relearn everything I once knew, but something I learned really quickly was how powerful the human ability to adapt is. Learning to walk again was a slow and painful process. Over the space of a year, I went from relying fully on crutches to using crutches with my prosthetic, to then using one crutch, to finally being able to walk on my own 2 feet. But as a kid, and one whose heart lay in being active, I struggled hugely to get back to the person I thought I was. I tried everything possible, from music to golf, to find something that I could physically do that would give me the same satisfying feeling that being active once did. But as the years went on, my strength grew. I put myself out there, participating in team sports, but became frustrated as I felt I was living in a constant battle between visualizing what I wanted to be able to do and then realizing that I physically couldn't. It's been a lifelong project, and I believe it will never end, because every time I question if I can do something, I then turn it into a challenge. By the time I was in my later high school years, I was pretty much doing everything I once doubted I could do. I'd worked every day to become able, because I refused to be defined by the word that technically labeled my situation. I wanted to be able, and beyond that, I wanted to be super abled. The only thing I hadn't managed to get back to was running. I was training a lot, boxing, lifting weights, but not running. Due to the nature of the surgery I had and the bending restrictions it presented, I'd been told running may not be something I could get back to. I remember trying to find a way as a kid. I'd go up to the local school on the weekends with Dad and attempt to run around the field, but I just couldn't move in the way that I used to. 3 years ago, I decided to give it another go. I ordered myself a running blade prosthetic and worked closely with a trainer for 9 months to figure out if I could physically put one foot in front of the other and run. I still remember the day I managed to run up and down the studio where I train. It was the most liberating feeling in the world. All up, it was probably about 50 meters, but the distance wasn't the point. The fact of the matter was that I ran. I put one foot in front of the other, and against all odds, I ran. It was January by this point, and me being me, I decided to set myself a challenge. Without really realizing how far 10 kilometers was, I told myself that by the end of the year, I wanted to run exactly that. It was January by this point. I got myself a running coach and trained as often as I could. I truly believed I was going to achieve this, but it got to October of that year, and I'd only run about 600 meters. My good leg was completely blown out by the load it was taking, but I was adamant that I was going to reach my goal. With 3 months to go, I kept pushing until I couldn't push anymore. I ended up on crutches with a stress fracture in my good leg, and I was forced to give up running for the time being. As you can probably imagine, this didn't sit well with me. I felt defeated. I felt like I'd failed, but then it dawned on me. The only way I could have possibly failed that challenge was if I hadn't tried at all. I realized it was never about the distance. It was about trying to achieve something I had loved before I lost my leg, and something that I thought was impossible. So I achieved my goal, right on the track where it all began as a kid who didn't know what it meant to appreciate that sense of freedom. That one experience, trying and failing to reach my goal of 10 kilometers, perhaps gave me the confidence to say yes and go hard on Dancing with the Stars, knowing that this failure didn't kill me. So outside of the physical challenge, why did I take on the challenge of this show? For me, it's an opportunity to have a platform to spread my message. I didn't initially say yes to Dancing with the Stars. In fact, I tried everything to get out of it. But once I realized the personal challenge it presented and the opportunity I had to reach people, there was no way I could say no. Because the only way we fail is through a lack of trying. So win, lose, or draw, I'm here to give it a go. I was hit with another wave of adversity as I entered my teenage years. 3 years post-remission, and the reality of the impact of what I'd been through was going to have on my life moving forward was hitting home, along with all the usual body image and self-confidence issues we go through as teenagers, but with the added adversity that I no longer had a leg. I spent years beating myself up. I got to the point where I'd lost my confidence so badly that I didn't want to leave the house. The nature of my amputation left my leg looking dramatically skinnier than my other leg, so before I managed to find someone to make a prosthetic thigh, every morning before I got dressed, I would pad my leg with socks, wrap t-shirts around the thigh area, wrap it with masking tape, and then secure it with a sports bandage, all so that I would feel comfortable wearing jeans. For 8 years, I never wore anything shorter than knee length, and I'd hide my prosthetic at every chance I got. I specifically remember being in situations where I'd have conversations with new people I met, but I'd be standing slightly to the side or slightly behind a piece of furniture in order to hide my leg. I don't exactly know why, because I was so confident about telling my story and so proud of what I'd survived, yet I lacked confidence to be the real me. This was one of the toughest stages of my life, but I knew I had to find a way through. I spent a really long time beating myself up, asking why I had to go through what I went through, why I couldn't just look like everybody else. All I wanted was to be perfect, to be so-called normal. It took me a really long time to believe and to understand that perfect and beauty aren't the same thing. I thought that my shot at ever feeling beautiful was gone because there was no way I was perfect, which in my mind meant there was no way I could ever be beautiful, but I was so wrong. It all changed for me when I began to slowly start finding the confidence within myself. I stopped hiding my leg, which allowed others to start a conversation with me around what I'd been through, and slowly but surely, the negatives surrounding my adversity began to be outweighed by all the positives it brought into my life. And without even realizing, I considered myself lucky to have gone through it all because it forced me to be vulnerable and really understand who I was, regardless of what I looked like. I now want to spend my life helping others find that confidence within themselves, to not hide behind their insecurities. I was lucky enough to have an insecurity so obvious that I had no choice but to confront it, but for some, it's harder. Especially now with social media and the ability to believe that images people are putting out there are nothing but perfect, and that their life is nothing but perfect. One of my biggest goals at the moment is helping people understand that perfection isn't the aim, that true beauty comes from confidence, and that none of us are perfect. I've recently been signed with a modelling agency and continuing to work with the team at We Are Tenzing to push these boundaries, particularly in an industry known for having certain beauty ideals. I want to tackle the use of Photoshop and become a part of a shift that we're seeing where we're using real people in advertising and media. I want young people to be able to look up to me and say, wow, she's not perfect, so I don't have to be either. This leads me to a story that I really hope this young girl doesn't mind me sharing, but one that brought tears to my eyes, and if you know me, that's quite rare. Currently being on Dancing with the Stars, I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the messages I've received from parents who have thanked me for giving their kids a positive, real, and honest role model to look up to, but this one story in particular stood out for me. A young girl from Christchurch sent an email to another contestant in the show telling her story through cancer. This young girl has been fighting the disease for some time and has lost every part of her hair except for a small ponytail at the back. Although she's been encouraged and supported by her loved ones to shave it off, she didn't feel she had the confidence to part with the one thing that still reminded her of her old self. Apparently, on the first night of Dancing with the Stars, this young girl sat with her family and watched me perform and speak about how I aim to inspire others to be 100% themselves. As soon as the show was over, she stood up, got a pair of scissors, and handed them to her mum and asked her to cut her ponytail. She said, if Jess has the confidence to be herself, then I can too. And so she did. And then she posted a photo to social media with the caption, I'm gorgeous without my ponytail, and shared it with her friends, showing 100% the person that she was. And it's moments like these that make every single battle I fought worth it. It's really easy in life to think it's all about us, that every experience we face is just us. We spend time drowning in self-pity while we get dealt the hand that we did. But one thing that completely changed my life was when I stopped looking at what I'd gone through as a personal thing. One day, I stopped beating myself up. I no longer asked, why me, in a negative light. Instead, I started questioning, why me, in a positive light. Why me, as if maybe this experience was more of an opportunity than some force of karma or sheer bad luck. I've spent my whole life being told I'm inspiring, that my story is inspiring, but to be honest, it meant nothing to me. I never believed I was overly inspiring. I believed I got dealt a terribly bad hand and I did what I had to do to survive and to become one of the lucky ones to survive. I didn't see that as inspiring, I saw that as surviving. But as I got older, I began to understand that it wasn't the fact that I had cancer that was inspiring. It wasn't the fact that I'd lost my leg that was inspiring. It was the fact that I chose to push through it with a positive attitude. It's that I made the decision to not sit on the sidelines of my life, to not be halted by my adversity, and that's when I began to have the opportunity to inspire. Because it's your response to the adversity, not the event itself, that determines how your life will move forward from that point. And it's through getting emails like the story I just shared where I began to be able to answer the question I'd spent years asking myself through tears. Why me? And now I can finally answer it. It's simply because I was given this mountain to show others how to move theirs. Thank you.